David Tepper. I was born in Italy, Jewish, and I went to Catholic school. And I lived on a farm in Italy that's now a Buddhist retreat. It wasn't when I was there. It was a chicken farm. We raised chickens for eggs. It was an egg farm. My dad is American, and in 1960, when he got out of college, 90% of the eggs consumed in Italy were imported from France. So he borrowed money, and he and his father started a chicken farm. And I was raised with 80,000 chickens on a farm. It was pretty big. And we had fruit trees and all sorts of things as a kid. And the farm did okay, but doing business in Italy was tough on my dad, so he sold the farm. And then he got into other businesses in Italy and remained in Italy. That's a whole other story. But so being Jewish in Italy, the better schools were Catholic schools. And so they sent me to Catholic schools and in the 1960s. And in the 1960s, and we're about the same age, you know, nuns hit people, just like they do in Asia and just like they do. My experience is much like a lot of Native Americans that were taken from their homes and sent to Catholic schools and missionary schools off the reservations in the U.S. And so, you know, that kind of confused me. Jewish, Catholic, and, you know, really we celebrated Christmas at home. We really didn't celebrate Jewish stuff. And when I was 13, I was bar mitzvahed, and I still don't understand why. And so I was bar mitzvahed, and I went to Catholic school. We celebrated Christmas, and none of it made any sense to me at all. But I was always spiritual. I always read, and so I would read the Old Testament, the New Testament, just different things. And Buddhism really made sense to me. It started with different books. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. I read that, had to be 9th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, so 13, 14. I read Siddhartha, and then other books, The Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham. That was revolutionary to me. And my parents got divorced, and my father got remarried in Italy. He stayed in Italy. My mother came to the United States. And he stayed in Italy, and I stayed in Italy, and he married a woman from Ireland who meditated. And she taught me how to meditate when I was 16. And so I've been meditating on and off, you know, for, oh, goodness gracious, almost 40 years. I didn't realize it was that long. And it quiets the mind. I find that if we don't meditate, we don't have the concentration. And if we don't have the concentration, you can't really be successful at anything. You kind of drift. You can get by in schools, especially here in the United States, where they don't like to fail anybody, right? So you can get by, but you don't really succeed. You don't really thrive. Because you don't get your teeth into something unless you're really, really passionate and really lucky. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to architecture school, hated it. Worked in an architectural office for 7 years, hated it. Never took the exam to become licensed architecture. I worked in a firm that just built banks, and I drew toilets and teller lines. And I could do crazy calculations with Excel. So I could figure out a bank, how many employees per million they had, right? Per $1 million of assets, how many full-time equivalent they had, their growth rate, and then I could crunch the numbers and figure out the size of the building they needed now, look at their capitalization, and anticipate in 10 years how much they would need. So I could build a structure and still stay within, you know, about 50% capitalization is what the FDIC likes. And so I figured all of that out, and it wasn't very challenging. It was just, it wasn't creative. And so I got into CAD at the time. CAD was very, very young, you know, very early on in the early 90s. And computer-aided drafting. And I would do architectural renderings on the computer. And the renderings, I would do walkthroughs like this building that we're sitting in. I could make a picture of the wood and in CAD draw the building and apply that picture to the wood, and it would look very realistic. It was very early on. And so I was doing those renderings, architectural walkthroughs, and you could walk through a whole building if I animated it properly. And I noticed that I didn't notice, it took me a computing time, sometimes up to 30 days of computing time. And I noticed that if I had parallel computing, it could be done in hours. So pretty soon my house had 28 computers. And so I quit architecture school, or I quit the architectural business, and I got good at computing. I went through a divorce and doubled my income in 1 year. I got into computer stuff instead of architecture. And I still wasn't into Buddhism yet, but I meditated on and off, I was just drifting. And computers came very easy to me. I was lucky. Like everyone else, I could figure out how to wire lamps and this and that. And so I started out with PCs and then got to servers and then got to networking stuff, and that's when it was fun. And so I was lucky at the time. It was just the wild, wild west of computing science. That was 97. So there was very few of us networking at the time. And Cisco was the big dog. So I became Cisco certified and started doing that. And that was okay. I did some big networks. And then started teaching. And that was fun, where you could sit and watch someone's eyes, and when they got the concept, it was fun. And it was empowering because you're helping people and being of service. And it was at that time when I said, okay. I had some friends. I walked with my daughter in Chinatown in Chicago into IBFA, International Buddhist Friendship Association. And I walked in and said, I want to learn. And a man sitting there, he said, then I will teach you. And that man was Carl Jerome, who's no longer here. I studied with him for about a year and a half, and that's when I met some other people, Sangha people, and they kept saying, we're going down to MABA, we're going down to MABA, wait till you see it, you're gonna love it. So they said, I said, what the heck is that? I said, all right, I'll do that. So I came down to MABA for a retreat. It was a silent retreat, 4 days, I think, where everyone was in silence. You meditated from 5 in the morning, you had breakfast, and then you went back and meditated, and you took breaks, and you had lunch, and you went back and meditated. And people had chores, and no one spoke. And it was the hardest thing I ever did. But I loved it. I came out refreshed. It wasn't a lot different. Everything I've ever learned, and whomever I've meditated with, it always starts with the breath. The difference here is, to specifically answer your question, is everyone else says pay attention to the breath. That's it. And that's useful. However, what Master Jiru teaches us here, specifically here, that's different than anywhere else, and you heard this yesterday yourself, he said, pay attention to the breath, but don't allow your breath to get shallow, because then your mind will wander and you will forget your body and you'll go somewhere else. And you have to keep remembering the breath, but it's the breath, and you have to breathe from the hara in Japan, right? Where the chi is right about here. And you have to just make sure that you're belly breathing, not just softly breathing. And very few people understand that. If you're just paying attention to the breaths and counting the breaths, counting to 10 and then starting over again, and if your mind wanders, you allow that thought to come in like a cloud, right? You allow it to pass, and then you start over again. And that's useful. But it doesn't really help us concentrate. You're still just drifting. You're still just counting. And I found that my mind would wander a lot. So now with the belly breathing, I concentrate on the movement of the body, and that keeps me more centered with my mind. If that makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah. So that's different. Also, what we learn here at MABA specifically, it's not just about the meditation. It's about the Mahayana tradition and it's about Chan. Chan is Zen, but Chan predates Zen. And it makes sense to me. There is some chanting, but there's not the pomp and circumstance that the Japanese have. It's not nearly as complicated as the Tibetans. The Tibetans have many, many rituals, and they're very rigorous. Where here it is simply, this is the teaching, you are on the way, you are on your own path. It is up to you to take responsibility to not just learn, but to be the Bodhisattva. In Japan, in the Japanese Zen tradition, they say Noma Dai Bosatsu. I believe that's right. Be the Bodhidharma. Be that. Day and night. Say it. Live it. Be it. But I found that the tools, I didn't have. So I can emulate, and perhaps that is a path. That's good path. It's like acting, right? Since you live in California, they have actors out there in Hollywood. If someone is acting, let's say as a policeman, since I'm not a policeman, and I was in a movie, where I had to play a policeman, I'm acting. It's not authentic to me because I'm not an actor. I don't have the chops. But maybe acting is okay until you act enough where it becomes second nature and you're not acting anymore. But that, to me, I didn't have the wisdom to understand that at the time. And I thought to myself, well, that doesn't seem very authentic. I think it's more authentic to see a path laid out. And so I was reading Shantideva and reading the Bodhidharma and the Path to Buddhahood. And all of these things made sense to me. And I've seen a lot happen here at MABA. This building wasn't even built when I came here that we're sitting in. We stayed at the Red Barn in sleeping bags. Everyone in one room, and we didn't have anything but the meditation hall. And so it was an exciting time. I have known, and you've known, many successful people who meditate. And they might not be spiritual. They might not have a spiritual practice, but they meditate. And so meditation transcends, I believe, religions. And we know this because Thomas Merton, who was a Christian, he meditated a lot. There's a lot of Jewish scholars who meditate. There's a lot of other Christian and other sects that meditate. Rumis. We spoke to one today, right? Well, we spoke to someone who knew of that. He might not have been a Rumi. So I think it's with every religion, meditation is part of that, or deep contemplation. The difference, I believe, is that in meditation, we can either have meditation to help clarify and still the mind such that we can concentrate better in our work life, or we can have an insight meditation like a vipassana. That's a whole other subject. But what I was speaking about was concentration, and it really helps quiet the mind. A lot of people now have ADHD and a lot of things. People are quick to throw drugs at the problem instead of just being mindful and slowing down. And I think I had some of that as a teenager. It was hard for me to concentrate. And it still is sometimes. I don't think I had ADHD or anything like that, but I think I needed something to quiet my mind. When I started teaching, I had to figure out how to teach. So I learned something really new. I learned how to weld. And I read a book on it. And I figured out that for myself, it took 3 times to read something to really retain it. First time I would skim it, then I'd go a little deeper, and then a little deeper still. And then I found that I had to kind of reread it, skimming it once a month until I knew it in my bones, like playing guitar, right? Or playing an instrument. You keep practicing until you have muscle memory. And then you don't think about it anymore. In architecture school, when we drew a line, we would spin the pencil. And you're very careful with that, because then you'd have the same line consistency from the beginning to the end. And you thought about it till it became second nature. Same thing with concentration, where you have to focus on the belly breathing, focus on the breath, focus on something. And it is that focus that helps us achieve things in life, whether we are better, in my case, a better educator, better photographer, a better person. It has helped me slow down. Instead of interrupting, people say, yeah, I got that, come on, speed up. Step back and slow down. Let people communicate the way they wish to. Can't force it. And so it's helped me in that way.
Good.
In all of those ways.
Good.
And meditation helped me with that. MABA specifically. I think that it is a unique opportunity to find a place that is located in beautiful rolling hills, that is mindful of water usage, a place of great beauty. Come and check it out. It's very lucky if you live near here to be able to come and see this. They don't ask for any money. Whenever I come, I bring food. Of course, I make some small donations when I can, but that's not what they're about. Other centers, it's join us, it costs this much a month, and all of this stuff. There's none of that here. It's authentic. This is authentic, and I think that it's a hard business. People, when they are looking for somewhere to study, hard pressed to find something as authentic and real as this. The monastics are approachable. The Master Jiru, the Abbot here, is a kind man. He's a good man and cares about you. When you look at him, you know it. And you can sense someone's energy. So to wrap it up, what will people get? You get an authentic experience. It doesn't cost much. It's got great food. You have good accommodations. It's 2017. It is just finished, so it's a new center for women to stay in. The meditation center, the meditation building is about 10 years old. It's not old by any standards. There's a lot of places that are much worse than this. This is beautiful to walk around. They've got gardens. They've got a small lake. They've got koi. What more could you ask for? It's beautiful. I just wish I lived closer.
Very good. Thank you, Dave.
Big gasho to you.